In In The Wisdom of the Trail by Jack London, a short story, two characters stand out above the others. Of course, the first one is Sitka Charlie. He's the leader of the expedition, and he's a interesting character. He he grew up among the white men, and he internalized their ways over a lifetime, and he's internalized their philosophy, and in his own opinion, he knows it better than they do themselves. And the reason he was so fascinated with the white man is because he longed for their power. He saw their power and he wanted it for himself. And so he studied them over years and contemplated their actions and their words and their attitudes, and developed the theory, the law which he saw that they followed. And because of that, uh, he wanted what the white man had so much and spent his life with him, that he had basically rejected his own people and exiled himself from his own tribe. And so he he spent all his time taking white men on expeditions, and back in the gold rush days, 1800s. And so then the other character was the woman. The woman, now normally Charlie would never allow a woman on one of his expeditions, because he'd seen enough of them. He knew they, in his opinion, they were weak, pathetic. I mean, not so much an Indian woman, who he respected their tenacity on the trail, but a white woman was a pathetic thing in his opinion to watch on the trail. They whined, they complained. Eventually, they just dropped off and died, and he didn't have time for it. And, however, on this particular voyage, he met an unusual woman that he hadn't seen before, and he became quite infatuated with this woman. Uh, she was unusual. First of all, normally he would, as I said, he'd reject him right off the bat, but she was different. She looked him in the eye. She was very confident, and she didn't beg. She didn't try to persuade him. She simply confidently claimed equality with men, and not in a feminist sense. She was just a strong woman. And this twisted Charlie's logic. He was so overtaken by her that he couldn't reason, and so he actually allowed her to go on this voyage. And it turned out that this was a good choice, because she actually exceeded expectations. Once, very, we're talking about a voyage through the vast Arctic Northland, where temperatures run 20 to 40 below zero, in the vast thousands of miles of endless ice and snow, and where the weak perish and the strong maybe survive. And so here we have this woman, and the reason she exceeded expectations is a lot of little things. Like, for example, she accepted no help when the men were staggering and ready to collapse with every step, and she was in a similar state. Yet she wouldn't accept any extra help from them, because she wanted to carry her own weight. She didn't want anyone trying to hold her up. Despite her own suffering and everybody else's suffering, Charlie would be lifted up by a flash of joy on her face when she smiled at him. And direct talk, we talked about that. She'd also offer a glance of appreciation at different times during the journey, which would lift Charlie up and give him energy and make him feel. It would lift him up. I don't know if he was in love with her. Possibly, it seems quite possible he had a crush on her. But that glance of appreciation would energize him, and he knew that she was a different kind of woman, and that this kind of woman would breed sons who were indomitable. And her smile lifted him up also. Her smile was like energy to him, a pick me up. And a word of thanks. She would when she spoke, it was in thanksgiving, a positive, appreciative tone of voice. And as the way grew darker and harder, and death seemed nearer and nearer, and the land became more unforgiving, and the climate became more rigorous and more ruthless, and the men became weaker, yet she became stronger. She also, when the men absolutely came apart at the seams and would break into lashing out at each other, and they would be cursing at each other, yet her voice would rise as a voice of forgiveness and charity. And so all of this picked up the others and kept them going when they might have otherwise just dropped and died and given up. For example, one example in particular stands out. So one night around the campfire, when some of these guys are thinking they aren't going to wake up again, they're just going to go down, fall down, go to sleep and die. Yet it says, here's a quote, "She sung to them at night till weariness fell from them, and they were ready to face the future with fresh hope." And indeed, that's what they did. So this woman, she had something in her spirit, a spirit of an indomitable spirit, a spirit of love and joy and thanksgiving and appreciation and all of this in song. And all of this lifted the others up and kept them going. And yet that she was, even though physically she was the weakest of this voyage, in reality, she was the strongest. She was the strongest. So the survival of the woman is a great example of the survival of the spiritual, because she had a spiritual aspect. The others were very men of the flesh. They were all about their physical strength, whether or not they could survive the hard elements with their physical strength. But it was failing them. It was failing them day in and day out. And yet this woman, through her spiritual qualities, were able to lift them up and show them a new kind of survival instinct that was far above that of the flesh, which was the spirit. And that we can actually find that in the Bible. If we look at was that Romans 8? Romans 8:13. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if you live by the Spirit and put to death the deeds of the body, ye shall live. So there's something about that this is natural to this woman's character that's actually a biblical law, which I call the survival of the spiritual. Thanks for watching.